All right. Well, just want to give major kudos to fantastic. I've said on this program many times before, if you can only listen to one podcast, you are only allowed one single podcast, and that's it. You need to listen to the Bible Thumping Wingnut. If you're only allowed one, listen to that. The Bible Thumping Wingnut is fantastic and good, solid, gutsy. If I had a mic drop soundbite, I'd use it.
Warning, the Bible Thumping Wingnut podcast is a Christian program that may contain graphic descriptions of death, burial, and resurrection, and may not be suitable for those who deny the God who created them. Repentance and faith is advised. This podcast is part of the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network. Biblical Christianity's marketplace of ideas. BibleThumpingWingnut.com. You're listening to the Bible Thumping Wingnut Podcast, the podcast that's safe for the whole family.
Unless your family contains professing atheists.
Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Bible Thumping Wingnut Podcast. It is May 10th, 2020, and we are live on YouTube around 7 p.m. every Sunday night. That's where this originates, and then later it's posted as a podcast on iTunes and BibleThumpingWingnut.com, right along with all the other podcasts that are part of the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network. Today, wow, we are already, just by the controversial title of this YouTube video, we have limited advertisements, which means basically we are not monetized because of the crazy title given to this YouTube hangout. It's called Men. BTWN number 385. Just based on that. So if you'd like to, if you appreciate what's going on here, you enjoy this, you're encouraged and ministered to via the BTWN network and the podcast and all that goes on, go to BibleThumpingWingnut.com and click on Support Our Ministry. 3 different ways that you can give. Thank you so much to everybody who gives. Patreon supporters and PayPal supporters, you guys pay for this. There's a lot to pay for. So thank you so much for your faithfulness. I am glad that it's an encouragement and it's much needed. So BibleThumpingWingnut.com, click on Support Our Ministry, and you'll find out all the ways to do that. Bible Thumping Wingnut is biblical Christianity's marketplace of ideas. That means everybody on our platform is a Christian. They agree on the core doctrines of Christianity, and then from that point, nobody agrees on everything. So that's why we call it the marketplace of ideas within biblical Christianity. Go check out the other podcasts. Matter of fact, there are at least 2 other podcasters joining me tonight, of which I am very, very excited about. So what we're doing here is I have invited a bunch of guys to join me. And the idea is just Christian guys getting together, talking about our lives, talking about culture, talking about theology. And there's a lot to talk about when you consider what's going on in our culture today. And I look forward to the conversation every day. I am really, really enjoying getting back to this kind of a format. I've been greatly encouraged and really enjoyed what we've been doing for the last month or so. So let me see if I can bring the other guys in and introduce them. I will do it this way. Today we have returning John Brady. He's the gentleman with the cheese head over his right shoulder. He's in Wisconsin. He is the voice of BTWN. He's the intro guy. And he's a personal friend of mine, and he helps with the website. helps with the website. He runs the BTWN website. So welcome back, John, also joining me once again. I believe on the bottom as well is Michael Coughlin. You were here a couple weeks ago, weren't you? Michael? He's smiling. You have to unmute yourselves. Everybody has to unmute yourselves. And then
yeah, I was here a couple ago with Len.
Your internet is lagging right now. He's got a delay, I believe.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. His power's out there in Ohio. But Austin Hessler is here also. Michael Coughlin has the podcast Be a Berean, and he's doing a great series on, he does a whole bunch of stuff, but one of the things that he's doing now is refuting some of the stuff that's been put up at the Friendly Atheist. And then Austin Hessler, Pastor Austin Hessler, Christ the Rock Church. His sermons are part of the Bible Thumping Wingnut Network, and we post them every Sunday morning. And you can check them out at BibleThumpingWingnut.com, or where else do you drop those? You drop those on your own website, which is Christ the Rock Church.
Mm-hmm. And we have our own podcast station as well on Podbean and other podcast catchers.
So, Austin, a lot of people wanted me to have you on.
Really? Good.
Because
I guess
you on Facebook, you're quite vocal. You are definitely a rebel today. So let me kick this off by sharing something that I saw today at my local CVS. I'm walking into the CVS, and there's this sign. Instead of saying face masks are required, it said face masks are required by law. And should I be like, no law has been passed. I was taken back by that. Like, why are they saying by law? It bugs me. And I know a lot of things are irritating you as well about what's been going on. So you've been very vocal about the government's handling of the current situation. Maybe you could just kind of speak to that.
Yeah, first let me say that's a radical departure for me. I've always said that pastors often kid themselves when they think that their platforms are big enough to contain more than just the gospel. And so they start to stray off into purely political arenas, and everything just gets messy and murky. And instead of having a ministry that is really marked by the gospel, they become, at least in the eyes of the world, political activists. So I have always stayed away from that sort of thing. Abortion would be an obvious exception because abortion is not a political issue. They can try to take it as much as they want. Abortion is a gospel issue. But with things outside of that, I have stayed out of it. What has made it different for me with this is that I believe this is so demonstrably evil that it does fall under the purview of what I ought to be speaking about as a pastor. And I'm careful about the way that I do that from behind the pulpit, and to some degree to differentiate me in ministry and me as a private citizen. But, I don't think this is as clear as abortion being murder. But I think that the Bible clearly teaches, for example, that a man has a responsibility to provide for his family. And so to take that ability away from a man is evil, especially if it's not legitimately predicated, which I don't feel that this is legitimately predicated. Also, there's a lack of equity in the way that these shutdowns are being applied. I can go to Walmart, I can buy all sorts of things, but the small boutiques and business owners, they have just gotten decimated. And my background probably has a lot to do with my perspective on this too. I've owned a couple businesses prior to being in the ministry. I was a small business owner more than once. And so I would not be responding this way if I did not believe that our government's response to this was, with crystal clarity, evil, which is not to say that I don't believe that Christians can have a broad variance in their perspectives on this issue. I certainly do. But the force that's coming from the government, the steps that they're taking, and also, I mean, I'm a military brat. I was born on an Air Force base. So that probably factors into this too, being part of my perspective.
Have they given any answer why Lowe's can be open and your local small hardware store can't?
Nope, I don't think so.
Another thing is silly things like dog groomers. Dog groomers can't be open. My dog needs to be groomed. I'm just saying.
Right.
It's so
right.
I'm starting to get a little. I think everybody's starting to get a little more irritated. Matter of fact, even YouTube. What's it?
I got a question. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael.
Austin, can you explain what makes something a gospel issue, and what another kind of issue would be?
Okay, by God, yeah. I really appreciate you asking that question, because that's something that I need to explain. I think this is a sin issue. Let me define it that way. Okay, I think there are clear sins involved here, and so we need to speak to this from Scripture. When I said that abortion is a gospel issue, what I mean is it is a clear sin issue that therefore needs to be addressed with the gospel and by Christians. It's not, for example, an issue that really is purely political, like, and everything is debatable when you talk about politics, but if you're talking about a couple decades ago in the debate about putting illegal immigrants on a path to citizenship, is that amnesty? Is that not? To me, that seems political in a way that stealing people's incomes, livelihoods, businesses, and decimating their abilities to provide for their families is not. I don't see this as political. I see it as evil, as I said. So I hope that helps explain that.
Is he still here? Yeah, we can.
He might have gone on mute.
Yeah, no, that explained it. Thank you. I muted myself because of the problems. My power just came on, so I'm going to actually try to reconnect a different way. But so, yep, that was a good answer. Thank you for explaining it.
I appreciate you asking it, because I can see that being confusing for people.
There's just so many things that are so inconsistent. So many things. It's just what in the world is going on? Now you and Michael, you went to a protest, right? Is that where you went?
We did.
Did you go to protest, or what did you do at the protest?
So, Michael, that was your first time there, yeah? Michael is frozen in space and time right now, preserved.
He left
beautifully.
He left,
like a statue.
He left
like a handsome statue.
He left, and I think now he's coming back.
All right. Well, I'll talk to Phil in time. I was there a week prior to Michael being there, and in that week prior to,
where were you? Where were you?
I state house in Columbus, Ohio. So I had gone the previous week, and I had shoe polished the windows in my car, and it said "Open Ohio Now." It didn't say anything, terribly inflammatory. But because I didn't know what it was going to be, we just drove around, which I heard it was a drive-in protest. So we just drove around there. It's a couple city blocks, I suppose. And we honked our horns, and there were people that were out. And then the next week I went back, and what I am is a preacher of the gospel. And there's a strange and uncommon confluence here of a political issue for me that I agree with, and an opportunity to give the gospel. Like I go to tons of political demonstrations, but I'm not there to demonstrate politically. I'm there to give the gospel. And I go to ones that I might agree with a little bit more, and ones that I totally disagree with, but I don't generally comment. I'm just there for the kingdom of Christ. And that's the second week that I went, what I did. I held somebody's sign once, but I went and gave the gospel. And I went to a local protest here last week, and I did the exact same thing. I'm there in person to show my support for this political cause. But really, primarily, I'm there to give the gospel. It's an important thing for me to love my neighbor by speaking up against gross abuses of the government as they are crushing people that I love and people in my own congregation, people outside of my own congregation. It is also important to me to not do that in a way that seems like fighting over the scraps that fall from Satan's table, being this world. So I don't, and it's a really hard balance, man. And if you're on Facebook with me, I apologize, because that is not like a balanced sampling of me. I'm very happy. If you knew me in real life, you would know that. But at the same time, I don't apologize for the fact that I am saying what I'm saying about the government's response, because I do again believe that it's evil.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. You're crystal clear.
That's some good internet. So if the power goes out again, I don't know if I'll try to reconnect. I went down to the protest. I was like Austin. I heard there was a crowd of people, and I thought I need to go preach. And I went down to the protest. That's where I saw Austin, and I just preached the gospel the first time I went. And one of the things that happened was I did sympathize with a lot of the people there and the types of things they were concerned about. And so I actually have a lot of friends who are going to the protest. There's a guy that goes to my church that's been to like every one of them even. And so it is interesting to sympathize with what they're saying. And so a part of me is kind of part of it, but a part of me is there still just to realize, hey, a lot of these people need the gospel. So two stories I want to tell you. The first one is that I told one person at one of the protests why I was there. And I said, one of the reasons I'm here, is to be encouraging. I said, but I also sort of want to babysit these people. And she kind of looked at me funny. And I said, no, I'm being serious. Like, this is a big group of people. There's a mixed group. And even the ones that are Christian, they don't all behave, we'll say, in the way that I'd call holy all the time. And so one of my goals is to sort of just be there, to keep an eye out for people, and to be able to, we'll say, offer correction if needed. So we had a situation where there was a woman who was going to the protest, and she was standing right alongside a lot of people that I'm friends with. And she had, I'll just say, it was a wicked sign. It was sexually suggestive and really disgusting. And even from a secular perspective, it doesn't help the cause. Like, it was just hurling an insult at the director of health in Ohio. And all it does is make us look like stupid, raging animals instead of rational people that are demonstrating. And so I brought that up, and it actually caused a bit of a divide in a group. And some of the people that realized, I think, that they don't want to be associated with everyone who even agrees with them on that issue. The second thing that I noticed when I went with Ricky and Nathaniel Porter the next week, we went to the protest, and I was there early because everybody, getting there early is the key to being able to hand out tracts and stuff. Well, I want to adjust my camera a little bit. Yeah. And Ricky Gantz gets up and, before we started preaching, my son was passing out tracts, and I met a couple, and we had a really nice talk. And I talked to this lady about Christianity, and she was a Christian. And it was like we talked long enough that she was saying Bethel Church was bad, like the people in Redding, California. So it was like a really nice conversation, and I thought, this is great. She's a Christian lady. And then Ricky started preaching, and this lady shouts like, "We're not here for that. We're here for a protest." And I'm like, what kind of person doesn't like the sound of gospel preaching? Not a regenerate person. And she was angry. And then she yelled, She said, "You're going to divide people." And I'm just thinking, yep, just like Jesus did. And so, there is a part of me that's like, I don't know, I'm not going to say that now.
Well,
if Ohio reopens and nothing changes from the perspective of repentance for things like abortion and promoting homosexuality, what good is it?
Correct. And just to kind of piggyback off that, that's why when I got up, I think it was after you to preach, basically I opened with a concept of what is the benefit if you are relieved of tyranny in this temporal existence, if you're then delivered to the consequences of the tyranny of your own sinful heart eternally. It doesn't make any difference. That's pure folly. Why do that? Why expend all this effort for this political cause so that you can attend to, ostensibly maybe a couple generations beyond you if you're concerned with your children and your grandchildren, but you give no concern to eternal matters. It's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. So for the Christian, I think that's one of the hard things to balance here, is if you get so swept up in the politics of the time, you fail in one of your primary directives on earth, which is to demonstrate to people that we transcend this. We really do. We're passing through. I'm a citizen of the United States, but my citizenship in heaven vastly trumps that.
I got to ask you a question, Austin. On your Facebook page, you say, "I'm furious with my government and greatly grieved at the condition of our republic." And a lot of people are. And the other thing that a lot of people are is they're scared, right? Mm-hmm. They're worried. Like some people don't have some people have twice the income they had and they're staying home, but other people don't. And some people, are worried about all kinds of things. But your comment goes on and says, let me start from the beginning again. "I'm furious with my government and greatly grieved at the condition of our republic, but make no mistake, I sleep well. Christ is my Savior, and as he slept in the bottom of a storm-tossed boat, because I know him, I too know his peace."
Amen. And that's me.
Let's face it, though, he must have posted that after that girl was arrested for giving manicures in Texas, because none of us could sleep when we thought that was going on, right?
The only time that I have really lost sleep over any of this, I had a really bad week last week because we rent from a church. We do not have a church building. And so we really, really thought from conversations, come May 1st, we're back, we're together. I can do anything for a short period of time. And then the bottom fell out of that. And I did lose sleep for a couple nights. I got people that are hurting. It's not like a suggestion for Christians to get together in the flesh, bodily in fellowship with each other. We need that desperately. And so as a pastor to see that's the only time that I have lost sleep over it. And man, I have been all up on like all the developments.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Austin. What happened? What happened that caused you to lose sleep? You you use space in another church and.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sorry, I didn't communicate that. They refused to rent to us. And it's not because they're not good people. They are very good people. They made the mistake of temporarily.
Because of the pandemic.
Yes.
Okay.
Because of the potential of somebody getting coronavirus, and then.
So today you can't assemble with your flock because you don't have a place to?
Correct. And I've tried multiple other places, and basically everybody is in that circumstance. So
just go to Walmart, right, or Lowe's.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's
what everyone has said.
I don't.
So did you guys not meet this morning then?
No, we've been doing the thing over WebEx.
Okay.
And then what we did change was we started having a few people over. See, there's Austin Private Citizen, who, I'm going to be careful in the way that I say this, has a pretty nonchalant attitude with respect to fulfilling certain governmental decrees that have been enacted in this time that I feel to be gross overreaches. And then there's Austin as a pastor who's not about to put his flock into a situation where they're likely to get arrested if it's not necessary, or cited, not arrested, that would be excessive, but cited or anything. So I have to think about all those concerns and the way that we do this. And we also, in our congregation, we don't have one uniform perspective on the matter at hand. And I'm actually glad for that. I think that with something as nuanced and complicated as this particular issue is, I actually take comfort from the fact that the people in my congregation have varying different views, because if they didn't, it would just demonstrate to me that, we'd fallen victim to groupthink, and maybe I or some of the elders was thinking for everybody, and that's not a healthy situation at all. So, but yeah.
I don't know how it is where you guys live, but here in Pennsylvania, they have lightened up some of the restrictions in parts of Pennsylvania, but not in my part. I'm in Northeast Pennsylvania, and we're very close to New York City. We're within 2 hours of New York City, and there's a lot of, apparently, there's a lot of known cases in my area, in my general area. So Pennsylvania has 3 stages. The first one is red, and that's all concerned. You can't get together with more than 10 people unless you're at a Walmart. This is crazy. It takes me off just to think about it. But some parts, they have gone to yellow, which means you can congregate 25 people. And green has to be many months away. And it is just destroying our economy. It's the impact, am I wrong? The impact on our economy is going to be horrific. I mean, right now, a lot of people, I've talked to multiple people that right now their financial situation is better than it has ever been. They're making twice as much money than they did when they had to go to work. Mm-hmm. And getting these people to go back to work could be hard. Like these people who are getting the extra $600 on unemployment, if their employer calls them up and says, "Hey, we'd like you to come back to work," they don't have to go back to work if they feel uncomfortable going back to work. All they have to do is say, I don't think that you can protect me enough. And then they can continue to get their unemployment and the extra money. So that's just creating a huge problem. Here, me personally, things haven't changed for me. I go to work every day. I go to places where people wear, Austin, I don't know if you've been listening, but I go to places where if you wear a mask, you get looked at like you're crazy. I go to a few places like that every week. And then I go to a lot of places where if you don't wear a mask, you are rebuked, and you're like, you're the crazy person if you're not wearing a mask. So
I tell you where you should go. Worst place on earth right now, Walmart, by far. I mean, like if you want to be unbelievably depressed, go to Walmart. I won't even go anymore unless it's a desperate situation, because people are so insane. They're basically wearing hazmat suits. But what makes me happy, for the most part, is going on hiking trails. Those are still open where I am. I don't know if they're still open where you are. But people on hiking trails are generally much happier. You can have conversations, from a distance, but they're not typically the same crowd that's lost their minds. And you know what? There are immunocompromised people that are in a different situation. I don't think they've lost their minds, but I've had little children recoil from me in stores, and the occurrence of children dying from this, even being seriously affected, is like statistically zero. It's like just above zero. It's just worthless fear.
This is what I think. I think all this money that our government is throwing around, I mean, we know a lot more about it now than we did a month ago. But what we should have done, and we should do now immediately, is if we're going to throw money anywhere, we need to throw it at or focus our attentions on the elderly, the old folks' homes, the assisted living places. Like my mother, she's in Syracuse. She's in an assisted living building, has 23 floors. There's over 200 elderly individuals, and we should be focusing our efforts in protecting the vulnerable. And it's the elderly. Most of the people who are dying from this are the elderly. Those are the ones that are threatened by this, and we should be, unfortunately, kind of quarantine the elderly and really inspecting the people that go into those buildings and care for the elderly, and protecting them, and let the economy run, let our businesses run, and just focus on protecting those folks. That's my viewpoint right now.
And I don't disagree with you, but I think that one of the things that's lost even in that conversation is personal dignity. So if you're in a nursing home, you're not in a good situation to begin with health-wise. Maybe you have a matter of months to live. Maybe you have a few years to live at most. But if I had lived the better part of a century, I'd probably want to be able to choose whether or not I would like to live my last days in total isolation without any human comfort whatsoever, or take my chances. So even in that, yes, for those that want to be isolated, there needed to be better protections. And the reality is we haven't protected them. I think I heard that between the UK and the United States, 40 to 60% of the people that have died were in nursing homes. That's after the lockdowns. I think in the US, it's something like a quarter of people were in nursing homes. We failed. We failed to protect those who were most vulnerable. We also failed to stop the spread. And let me say this so your listeners know. So if you're following me and you think I'm a nut on Facebook, you can at least understand this much. I did not judge harshly Governor DeWine and other governors in the beginning weeks of this. I still then believed that what they were doing was unconstitutional and inequitable and therefore unconstitutional in the beginning weeks. But I gave them much grace because there was so much hysteria and there was so much uncertainty. So DeWine is responsible for 11 million people, man. I don't want to be in that situation. So I'll give him grace for the first few weeks. When the data came out, though, that demonstrated that what they had predicated the response on was false, it was pure fiction, they didn't adjust. They didn't adjust at all. In many ways, they doubled down and they extended this. For that, I hold them very accountable. And you alluded to it earlier, Tim, the arbitrariness of these laws. You know, God's law, it's very, it's very relevant. It's sensible. You can understand why it was put in place. It all reflects the character of God. There's nothing arbitrary about it. Arbitrary laws that have no benefit whatsoever, like, for example, cloth face masks that have no value in reducing the transmission of diseases or things of that nature, you know, making it a crime to shake somebody's hand, stuff like that. That's a different level.
I want to welcome two new participants. Just so you guys know, the chat that you're using in the Zoom chat is showing up live, so it's public. John Williams is here. John Williams is well known to anybody who's been watching or listening to the podcast last few weeks. He is the host of the Servant's Heart podcast. Welcome, John Williams, to the I don't even know what to call these things. To the show. We'll call it the show. And then Jonathan Bradford is back again. If you've been listening, You know who Jonathan is? He's a flat earther from Edmonton, Canada. And Michael Coughlin points out that we need more Johns in this hangout. 50% of the people in this hangout are named John. And if I mute you, it's because, like Austin is just making room noise. I muted him. You can always unmute yourself, I do believe. So welcome, John and John.
Good to be on. Good to be on with all you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see everybody. It's quite the group tonight, though. Quite a large group tonight. That's good. That's good. So,
I want to say Michael Coughlin needs to be very careful because I think I saw a very creepy guy over his left shoulder there a little while ago. Bill Clinton was behind him.
Hello.
Do you know, I have noticed, do you guys know that John Williams, that real smart guy, Stefan, YouTube guy, he's also part of he goes to 20, he's the most popular guy that goes to 21 convention.
Yeah.
What's his name? Smart guy. He's still an atheist, I believe, but he speaks positively about Christianity, and he's very popular.
Oh, I can't think of his last name.
Anyway, look it up. Him and Wretched Radio. I subscribe to them on YouTube, and day after day, one of their videos, or both of their videos, are being made private. And if you look at the title, they were talking about the true facts about COVID-19. And if I labeled this the truth about COVID-19, and we talked about, the real facts, and if we poo-pooed the seriousness of it, matter of fact, me just saying that right now, this video may become unavailable. What are we looking at?
Stefan Molyneux?
Yes.
That's the guy. I think that's how he says his name.
Every time he makes a video exposing the falsehoods about the pandemic, YouTube takes the video down.
Mm-hmm.
Takes them down.
The thing that I'm upset about is the fact that these videos, they're making them private, so it looks like you're the one actually taking it down, when instead of actually removing the video and say that this video has been removed for copyright grounds or for violating terms of service, they actually private the video, which is really, that's really upsetting, because you don't know who's the one hiding, if it's YouTube or the actual content creator.
I don't know who Ted is, but he says we want to pay attention to the comments in the live feed. I don't know who Ted is, but he says to Michael, he says, just want to give a shout out to Michael for his superb analysis of the predictions during the NFL playoffs this season, this past season.
Thank you.
What is that about?
I don't know. We did a few podcast episodes on the NFL playoffs, and we made some predictions, and I don't know if I got a whole lot of things right statistically, but there was a couple of very specific things that I predicted, almost jokingly. Like, I predicted Tom Brady's career would end on a pick six that ended the game, and it wasn't his career that ended, because he's still playing next year, but that did end the season. And so there was a couple of really crazy things that I called out that ended up happening. Maybe that's what he's referring to.
That did end up happening.
Yeah, there was like 2 or 3 things that I said that were just like exceptional. Yeah, maybe this guy will do this crazy thing, and they actually happened. I don't know if I got any games picked right or anything like that, though.
And then Ted also asks if Austin feels alienated because he's the only one without a beard.
I'm an Arminian spy, Ted. That's why I don't have a beard. Actually, the real reason I don't have a beard is because it grows like out and then like right back in to my face. And so I tried to be a real Calvinist for a while, and it just made me itch like crazy. So no, I've always been content to kind of go my own way. So I'm beardless Tim.
That's making me feel great this week, because last time I was on, I was the one without the beard and was being made fun of a little bit because of that.
There you go. I can't see your face, friend, but I'm glad to know that it too is smooth like mine.
Well, it's scruffy this time, but it's not not
okay.
Calvinistic beard length. So.
I think that was more because you're Canadian, a beardless or a short bearded Canadian. I think that's what it is, really.
I think John has re-entered the room. I'm gonna boot the one. Okay, now he's back. Okay, John's connecting better. John Williams. Hey, I should point out that the two of the men here are on the docket to speak at the Builders Summit. Austin, did you know Michael Coughlin is going to be speaking at the Builders Summit this year?
I did. I'm excited about that. I have known Michael for a little bit, and I look forward to getting to know him better. We've done evangelism. I think we did evangelism probably first time. It's probably been a while ago, outside the OSU stadium.
Did you come to OSU?
I did.
Did you come with Brad and Anthony?
Joe Conkle was there.
Oh, you came with
the first
Joe.
time that I was there. Yeah.
Yeah. I know a year ago we spoke at a conference together, the Equip Ohio conference on June 1st.
Oh, that is right.
And then we went to the homosexual parade. I don't remember you coming to Ohio State now. That's funny though. I was certainly there.
That was a long time ago.
Was it a long time ago?
Yeah. That was probably 5-6 years ago.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that nothing binds together in Christian brotherhood more, in my opinion, than getting together and doing street evangelism. And then Michael didn't remember Austin being at one evangelism outreach, so
apparently it was more special for me than it was for Michael, but that's okay. Ricky was there. Joe was there.
Was Brad there? Brad Volka?
I don't think so. Could be wrong, but I don't think so.
I'm sorry, man. I don't remember that day now.
It's all right, Michael.
I think Michael does so many outreaches. He's just
that's what it is.
They all blend together.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat down. I've been promising everybody that I'm going to make public the Builder Summit sessions from last year, and the first session by my pastor is public. I think you can only see it on Patreon, so I need to make that public to everybody. And then the two sessions with Michael Foster, those are public because one was a podcast and the other one was streamed live. And then, so what's left is two sessions by Austin Hessler, 2 sessions by Dustin Seegers, and 1 session by Pastor Adam Staub. And I went to start to edit those once again, and I spent 2 hours just labeling files because each session has 3 camera angles and a sound file. And then the interviews with George Bruno, those have 3 camera angles and 2 sound files so that's in the works, and that's on the top of my list of things to get to do, because I believe that people seeing those will help promote the Builders Summit this year. For those of you who are listening, the Builders Summit is November 13, 14, and 15. Check it out. Early registration is happening right now. Buildersummit.org. John Williams, are you going to the Builders Summit this year? Your microphone is not working at all. That's not connected. You need to choose your settings for your microphone because it's not working at all. I set him up to promote the Builder Summit. I know he's really excited about it. But he didn't. His mic's not working. So what is Free Ohio? Tell us more about what's going on in Ohio.
Me or Michael?
You're in Cleveland and he's in Columbus. You guys are pretty far apart, aren't you?
Yeah, so Free Ohio. So freeohionow.com is a website somebody made that's basically just trying to get more people to express their desire that the governor and the director of the Department of Health would really stop what they believe is an overreach in shutting down the economy, we'll say, for lack of a better phrase right now. So these are not, and part of the reason Free Ohio exists is because the protests, the demonstrators it hasn't grown. They've hoped more people would join. They know there's more people that are unhappy about what's going on, but in general, again, you have some people that I'll just call peace loving. I mean, they're just staying home, they're minding their own business, and I think I think a lot of people just hoped it would end quickly. And so some of the people that are a little more vocal, maybe people that are a little more afraid of what is happening now, how that will affect the future, they're trying to rally more people to go around the different counties. So one of the ideas is this: Governor Mike DeWine can say whatever he wants from his press conference podium. And in fact, one of the mistakes a lot of people have made in Ohio is that Governor Mike DeWine hasn't even said anything that's legally enforceable, and he's admitted that for the most part. If your church wants to get together, you're not violating anything that you can be arrested for in Ohio. So that all they've done is allow the hysteria to kind of manifest in a way that where you're afraid to do it because you're afraid of what your neighbors will think, because everyone's so convinced that it's bad. But one of the ideas with Free Ohio Now, I think, is that if your county can get together and the commissioners in that county, if the sheriff can say, hey, you know what, open your barber shop, open your deli, open your pet grooming place, we're not going to arrest you. And we can have pretty good certainty that Mike DeWine's not going to send the troops in from Columbus to all these places. Then economies can start opening up on local levels, knowing that they have the support of their local law enforcement and things like that. So I think that's one of the things they hope for. I did hear there's one county in Ohio where the commissioners got together and just kind of told everybody, look, like, we just don't think you have to obey all these rules. You can open your businesses. You're allowed to ask someone to wear a mask. You're allowed to ask people to stay distant. All the things people think are going to help with the virus situation. But that's the general idea around it, is just to kind of get people trying to make changes all over the state of Ohio, instead of a few hundred protesters driving over 100 miles every couple of days to come to Columbus, so that Mike DeWine doesn't really listen to him anyway.
And what I'll say is, I was at the local one this past week, and the local one had as many as I've seen at the state.
Which makes sense, yeah. And then you multiply that by maybe 50 counties. There's 88 counties, but let's say on average half of them get that much. You're talking about 44, 50 times the protest, and at levels where maybe changes could occur. Let's say, because the exact opposite happened. Not exactly the opposite, but something similar happened when Mike DeWine said. And when I say Mike DeWine, if someone's going to say, well, Amy Acton, the director of health, she said it. Well, Mike DeWine has made it clear, if Amy Acton says it, he's responsible for it. He has made that abundantly clear, which actually makes him responsible for abortion too, which we already should know, but it makes it more clear. But Mike DeWine said that the abortion clinics should stop doing abortions because they're elective procedures. They don't need the personal protective equipment. And he had the attorney general write a letter to the abortion clinics in Ohio to let them know, like, basically like, hey, we still love you. We want you to be back in business soon. But right now we're just asking you, don't use the equipment for a few weeks. And the abortion clinics, knowing that he had no right to do this, just wrote him back and said, just forget it. We're going to do what we want. And they also know that they're going to win in court, not only because technically they're right about this thing, but they have more money to fight against those things. And so Ohio businesses didn't choose to, kind of fight back in the same way. But the point is nothing DeWine says means anything except to people that just want to make it mean something. It's
pure placation.
Yeah.
That's all it is. He'll say one thing, like, for example, Ohio's going to open up on a certain date. We're going to open our restaurants. And a little bit more information comes out, and it's, the patio is going to be open on the restaurant. And then whatever, 10 days later or a week later, we're going to open up the inside. It's Ohio in springtime. How much good is a patio going to do you? It literally snowed 2 days ago. That's how crazy it gets here.
And it was like 90 degrees earlier that day. So,
I was like, why? Yeah.
But here was the thing. People wrote him letters, like pro-life people, and they said, hey, you said the abortion clinics had to be shut down. Why don't you send somebody in to stop them? And he said, oh, it's a local law enforcement issue at this point. And then, of course, the local law enforcement was like, well, we don't care. They pay us $50 an hour to stand guard outside the place. Why would we arrest them?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're making overtime, like just basically hanging out here, protecting them from protesters. So and Len was here. Oh, there's Len. Yeah. We've got to get Len's opinion on something, right?
Can you hear me yet?
Yep, we can hear you now.
You got me now?
Yep.
Yeah, John.
Okay, there. Good. I resolved it. Good. Love to hear what others have to say, but like Len or anything. But I know here in Pennsylvania today, I went to church. I saw more cars on the road than before. Cumberland County officials and Lebanon County officials here in Pennsylvania are pretty much telling our Governor Wolf, to go pound sand, him and Dr. Levine. And Dauphin County is not far behind, because economically, I think the one commissioner for Dauphin County said there's over 1 million people not working. That's ridiculous.
I'm 2 hours north of you, John, and I definitely noticed Mother's Day weekend, a lot of traffic. Friday, as I was on my way home, saw lots of cars full of families, a lot of out-of-state plates. People are not staying home for Mother's Day. They are definitely not staying home for Mother's Day. Len Pettis, the founder of the Bible Thumping Wingnut podcast, is joined. Everybody loves Len. How are things in Wisconsin?
That is not true at all. I had a memory on Facebook today that I shared episode 7 of the Bible Thumping Wingnut show in 2014.
Wow.
So that was 6 years ago today. It was episode 7 of 2014.
Do you remember what did we talk about that? That was after.
Oh, I didn't click the link, but what's funny, dude, is it was a Blog Talk Radio link.
Yeah. That was, I know 4 and 5 where Jeff Durbin was on. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I wonder if it was Marcus Pittman.
Yeah, we had him on within the first 10 too.
Yeah. So what are we just going state by state and just talking about the impact of the shutdowns and everything?
Yeah, we're just unguided.
Yeah, it's pretty undirected.
Yeah.
Who's in charge of this anyway? John Williams. John Williams in charge of it.
Yeah, blame the fat guy.
This weekend there was a bar that tried. Where was that bar, honey? Like in Greenville? Did you see that thing in the Open Wisconsin Now Facebook page? Anyhow, there was a bar in Wisconsin where they were rumored to be opening up, and what happened was a bunch of people went to this bar, parked their cars there, and then went to the backyards of some neighbors and everything. And like 26 state troopers descended on this bar. And it was empty, by the way. They did this to just totally set up law enforcement because they knew all the Karen neighbors would call the snitch. So like, I don't think it was 26. I think it was like 16 state troopers, K9 units, and all kinds of stuff descended on this bar that is, by the way, in the middle of nowhere. It's like one of these, unincorporated villages where you drive through. There's a Catholic church, a Lutheran church, 6 bars, and 4 houses. That's kind of rural Wisconsin in a nutshell. But yeah, it's crazy. And they got there, they look in, and it's under construction. They're replacing the floor in the building, but all of these state troopers came in. There's just no shortage of tyranny going on. I'm fairly concerned about the future of this nation. 40% of businesses that are currently closed are probably never going to open their doors again. And who's going to want to be an entrepreneur on the other side of this? Who is going to want to open a business on the other side of this, knowing what the government is going to do, unless the people rise up and replace the government that they have put in place, as the Constitution allows them to do, by force if necessary. Unfortunately, men today are too busy, waddling around in skinny jeans. They're not man enough to fight anymore. So old guys like me have to sit around here and just kind of watch it happen, and just hope that my voice is of some use to help change hearts and minds. But I have a lot of, the Dow Jones is down 60%. Not that that's a barometer of economic health, because it's not. That's like saying, well, I have good credit, therefore I'm financially stable. No, it just means you have a lot of debt, which is the opposite of being financially stable. The Federal Reserve may finally get audited after this thing, which would be a very good thing. But you have, 3 rounds of quantitative easing that have come out of this, and, oil getting down to negative $40 a barrel, not even a month ago.
Why are gas prices going up now?
Because they're anticipating people getting out of quarantine and starting to travel. It's not the price of crude going up. It has nothing to do with it. The crude prices are set a month in advance with the futures market. So it has nothing to do with the stability of oil. It has everything to do with just the anticipation of people finally starting to get the roads, which, as a few people here have already said, you drive around, you see nobody is quarantining. Nobody. My wife and daughter went to Target yesterday. It was like Black Friday. There was a line around to the back of the store for people waiting to check out, So nobody's taking this seriously. And most importantly, our leaders, the ones who are telling us we need to stay in, are staying in. And dude, this is like, you watch the news, it's like the war of the worlds every day.
Are people wearing masks in those facilities, Len?
There's a couple stores like Menards is forcing people to wear a mask to come in. And by the way, they'll be happy to sell you one of theirs for $1.
Just a couple. Here you can't go in any store anywhere without them.
Yeah. CVS says it's a law here.
By law.
There's no law.
Who passed the law?
Yeah. Our Secretary of Health made it.
Certainly the legislature, right? Because that's
John Williams. I don't know if you were in here, but when I talked about it, but I went to CVS today, and there was a sign that said, "Masks are required in this building by law." And that's the first time I heard that it passed as a law, because it didn't.
I went down to there and I said, "Hey, your sign out front's wrong. There's no law that's been passed. I understand you're licensed by the health department, so you have to follow rules, but you need to change your sign because there has been no law passed." My question is, for anybody in the room, where do you see the health of the church because there's a lot of live streaming going on. Are we going to see the dynamics of church size change? What are the thoughts on that?
I'll just weigh in briefly. I'll say, oh yeah, big time. And I think that will be one of the blessings of this. I don't know that a lot of pastors will view it that way, but there's going to be a great separation, as far as I'm concerned, of the wheat from the chaff as a result of this. Christians want to be back together. They are hurting right now. There's going to be an increase in longing, so genuine believers will go back the second that they're able to, because they have had this enormous part of their spiritual existence evacuated from them. You're going to have an enormous number, though, of false converts not go back at all. And so there's a strong argument to be made that we should never have taken churches online, because one of the things that we communicate week in and week out is this is a special supernatural experience that cannot be digitized. It can't be duplicated. Don't just listen to your favorite internet preacher that isn't a surrogate for this. It's selfish. Don't sit there and be involved in something where you hear one guy give his opinion and you give nothing back to anybody else. But now we've told people to do that. So maybe we shouldn't have done that. And there are churches that didn't. They just ceased gathering altogether. But I think, to answer your question, I think, yes, it's going to permanently reshape the evangelical landscape. I think it is going to send an enormous number of people to their couches permanently. And ultimately, I think that will be a good thing for the true Church of Christ. If pastors can see it, that's a blessing, brothers, because it just took an enormous number of false converts away from you. It'll actually aid the health of the church.
Yeah, definitely a good info there, Austin. The point of gathering, or at least one of the major points of gathering together, is that's where we do all the one anothering that we're commanded to do. The New Testament over and over talks about love one another, serve one another, exhort one another, encourage one another. All the one another's happen in the context of gathering together with other believers. And you know what? To recognize that in an extreme situation like we find ourselves in the middle of, to a degree, you make accommodations for what's going on in society, but they are effectively, or at least should be, temporary while the situation is there. But you find, like you say, that we learn some things about the type of people who are involved in going to the church services that we have in our culture. And your comment about separating the wheat from the chaff was the same thing going through my mind right as you said it, and going, you know what, this will cause a number of people who aren't really Christians to be exposed and to stop going to church, because for them, they never really did the one anothering anyway. It was, I'm going to show up and be a consumer, and not really be involved, and because my heart was never changed. But at the same time, I think you'll see also a strengthening of true believers, and that's probably the same pretty much any time believers go through any type of trial or tribulation, that it strengthens people. It'll be interesting to see so many different churches if you could have a camera in the lobby as people start going back again and seeing, how many people, oh, forget about a 6-foot rule, man. I haven't seen you in so long. I just want to give you a hug. And to because people have missed each other that much. And yeah, you can't do that kind of thing online. You just can't do it digitally. Have that connection, have that one anothering. To be able to go temporarily, we're going to do certain things to address the situation going on in our society right now. But yeah, long term, that's not church. Everybody's sitting at home on a Sunday and watching one person monologue to them is not church.
That's spot on, brother. And that's what I've communicated to my church through these WebEx meetings that we're having. I've told them numerous times, don't get this twisted. What we're doing here is the best that we can in the circumstance. We're coming together around God's word, but this is not church. It's not. So we haven't had a Lord's Day worship truly since all this shook down. We won't have another one until all of this is over and we are back together in the flesh.
No, we'll have it when pastors start to man up and stop being cowards and stop waiting for the world's permission to be the damn church. That's when this will all pass. Honestly, the first 2 weeks, right? Everyone in good faith went home for the love of the elderly, primarily in their bodies, which if you go to a small church like mine, I would say at least 50% of the congregation is over the age of 50. But look, the longer this is going on, people are starting to see we have been had. Okay? Walmart doesn't hire people with specialties in sanitation that they can keep their place so clean, but my church is somehow this, nesting hive for germs for 2 hours a week, while Walmart is open 24 hours a day. So I think not only are church members being exposed and a wheat and a chaff being separated there, but I think it's also in pastors. I really commend Jesse Duplantis, the one man who stood up and said, we are going to worship, was a heretic. I wish pastors today had the boldness of hairdressers, but they don't. They just don't. And so they're going to stand down with their tails between their legs to the government waiting for permission to worship. Read Daniel, okay? The pilgrims, half of whom died coming here for religious freedom and froze to death, are rolling over there in their graves in shame. John Bunyan, imagine him closing his church. No, he would rather die in prison. I mean, give me a break. I take no joy in saying this because in my community, there's no churches open. None. There's not a man to be found in the pastorate in my community. And it sickens me because I'm wondering, where am I going to go to church when this is over? Because who is going to shepherd me through persecution when real persecution comes, when this preview to persecution is upon us? They've all disappeared. Tails tucked, no balls, ran away hiding. Where are you going to be to shepherd me through real persecution, pastors? That's the question I have.
I'd say I agree with a lot of that. I don't know if I don't think you aren't on yet, Len, but we, as elders, we voted weeks ago to go back, and I went to go back, and we rent because we planted about 4 years ago, and the church that we rent from denied us that, and every other place that we tried to rent from has also denied us, because everybody's afraid of litigation on account of this. So as far as we were concerned, we'd have been back weeks ago. So I agree with that. I will say every pastor's situation is unique. And then at the same time, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but yeah, I mean, at some point you just got to say it. A lot of it too comes down to Romans 13. People keep going back to Romans 13. I believe that I'm submitting completely to my government, completely. And that is to the actual law of the land, which is the Bill of Rights, and not to petty tyrants at the local level that make up whatever stuff they want. There's no representative process at work. There's no legitimate body of elected officials that are making these things. We have been reduced to each state having its own monarchy. We have kings and queens that are giving us these rules, and I don't think that we as Christians, me as a pastor, I don't feel particularly obligated to obey a lot of these things. Now, for the sake of peace, I will obey many of them in my personal life. But as far as bringing the saints back to worship, that should have happened. For most churches, that should have happened a long time ago. We did what we did at the beginning because we didn't know. There was such uncertainty, and to put people into a situation where we were told they could legitimately die just seemed insane. But now the truth of this has been manifest, and this can't just linger on. I mean, you think about the churches in California, 50. Did you guys hear that? That 50 of them came together in a coalition? Or was it 500? 500. I don't want to grossly. It was 500. Okay. 500 of them came together in a coalition and have said that they're coming back, basically hell or high water, May 31st. So that's what's going to happen around this country. I understand that it's gotten muddy because they've also closed businesses. That's what guys are saying. They're saying we're not being persecuted because they've also closed businesses. And I think that's largely true, except for a few places. I don't think we in particular are being singled out. But then those businesses, there's an inequity economically from business to business. And there's also an inequity when it comes from Walmarts to local churches. None of that's being explained. None of it makes sense. So at what point do we just say as local church pastors, yeah, we're not doing this though, because the Bill of Rights is a thing. So I agree with much of that.
Yeah, I see more pastors fighting for their rights to carry a firearm than for their rights to worship, and that troubles me. That troubles me greatly, especially leading up to this. You know, let me just read. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's a question in the chat. Let me read it and you guys can see what you think. It says, what do you guys say to a pastor that calls their church the scattered quarantined church and continues to refer to the online version of church as a gathering?
I mean, it's a gathering in some sense. I would want to know what he was meaning by that. And is he making any kind of a differentiation between the church gathered and the church scattered? I don't know. I want to have that defined before I made
show me your virtual baptisms, Pastor. Show me your virtual Lord's Supper. Give me a break. This is the nonsense that Tim and I ran into when we first got onto YouTube. The unchurched church. These people who feel like as Pastor Austin, you were saying, wanting to watch a sermon online or gather with believers like this and call what they're doing church. Like, we can worship individually, right? I worshiped with my family this morning, but it is not church. What we're doing, the seven of us here, is not church in any sense of the word. Biblically speaking, it couldn't be justified as such, because the church literally, it's an assembly, a gathering together, right? Like, we wouldn't do this online and say we're protesting the government. We're having a government protest right here online. No, I mean, there is a presupposition that when you have a protest, you are gathering together at a place to make your feelings known and get a redress of grievances, as it says in the First Amendment. You can't do a virtual protest any more than you can do virtual church. It's silly.
I agree with you on that, Len. A few weeks ago, Adam Stahl was my pastor, by the way. Adam had contacted several of the men of the church and asked their thoughts on, let's start getting back to worshiping together. The problem is, and I just had this discussion with someone over social media, which I hate doing it on, but you got to be sensitive. You're so compassionate to people who are at high risk. Wait a minute. 79-year-old is the average age in Pennsylvania of people who are dying from it. 3,100 deaths as of Friday. 2,100 of those 3,100 deaths were in nursing homes. So at what point do you say, as a pastor, listen, this doesn't make sense. We need to gather together. So we decided, as of a couple of weeks ago, that we were going to start gathering together back as a church. And those within the church that felt that they didn't want to, they can live stream. Not speaking on Adam's behalf, that feeling they can join us in a live stream. My personal feeling about live stream is, once this is all gone, I don't think there should be any such thing as live stream. It wouldn't encourage people to get out of their off their couches, sitting in their pajamas, eating their Cheerios and watching church that way. They need to get up and they need to gather. Like you said earlier, we need to shake a hand. We need to hug a neck. We need to be with our brothers and sisters in Christ.
Not
This
just
is
that.
not a gathering.
Not just that, but where do I exercise my gifts towards the body? I often tell people, what's that? John F. Kennedy who said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I use that often in reference to the church. If my attitude is, what can my church do for me? I'm looking at it wrong. It should be the other way around. What can I do for the fellow Christians that God has placed me in the family of God with? How do I exercise whatever giftings that I have towards them? And the person who's saying, "Oh, I'm good with a live stream because I can get everything that I always got on a Sunday morning while I'm sitting at home and watching on TV," I go, I think there's a fundamental break in understanding of what the purpose of gathering together with other believers is.
Christ said, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. What an example.
And you look at that and go, okay, so is there a way, I don't know where you guys are and you've got all the different regulations or whatever, but let's say you're at a place where you have a church that has 150 on average on your Sunday morning, and you can't gather now. And they come out and say, you know what, we're setting our restrictions. We're being a bit more relaxed. You can now get together in gatherings of up to 25 people, but that's the limit and whatever. And so instead of the pastor saying, no, we're going to rebel against that, we're going to open up the church doors and have 150 people there. Let's say you get together and go, okay, let's pick 6 people's homes and get together in groups of 25 at each of those 6 people's homes. And we can live stream the sermon there, but you're able to, pray with each other and share with each other and go, you know what, even, I know this might go against what some people would say, but maybe even practice communion there in that setting. It's not the whole gathering, but it's a part of it. And, can you exhort one another in that setting? Can you give to one another? And look at that and go back to someone said earlier about going, every pastor's situation is different, every church's situation is different. But are you looking at, okay, well, how can we, maybe this is back to the conversation before I jumped in, but how can we look at that Romans 13, submitting to governing authorities, while still at the same time going, God calls me to love him and love my neighbor, and that will trump anything that if a governing authority says I can't do that, well, that's where my line in the sand is drawn. But if they say, okay, you can only do these things, am I at least willing to go, okay, how can I do the best that I can and still, like Austin said earlier, live at peace with them, be peaceably with them? And sorry, a little bit rambling there, but.
Jonathan, are you a pastor?
I am not, no.
Oh, okay. You sound, you're speaking you're saying a lot of the things that would be consistent with that, because as a pastor, there are landmines everywhere you step. You're trying to navigate through the various different perspectives of people in your church, trying to make things that are not legitimately a test of fellowship for Christians a test of fellowship. That would be a horrible thing. And at the same time, taking care of the body in a way that's comprehensive, that accounts for various different perspectives, but that doesn't turn a small minority into the group that dictates what we do forevermore. You know what I mean? Not just the young people saying, well, I don't care, I'm probably not going to die from this, it doesn't make any sense, we're just going to do what we want. We want to let the older folks that are at more risk know that we love them and we care about them. But one of the ways that we love people and we care about them is by having them together. And, one of the things that I'm seeing in my congregation is teenagers and early 20s. They're not doing well right now. You have married couples that tend to be doing a lot better because they're with each other. there is a kind of effect from the isolation of this that has just been devastating for many people.
All right,
I'm Christian or not, but especially in the context of the local church.
Let me throw it out from the let me just play the devil's advocate, but real life situation here, okay? Because the arguments are being made. Let's go back to church. Let's go back to church. Let's go back to church. In my situation, we somebody said, not sure who said it. You know, my church closed because the first couple weeks we believed everything, and then kind of like it seemed very prudent that you ought to close your church, or to be careful, to love your congregants. We ought not to meet for a while. Okay, so let's reopen my church. There are multiple regular attenders who will attend who are over 70. And as soon as you open the door, they'll be there because that's what they do. But one of the people that they should stay very far away from in the whole church would be me. I would be the one that everyone should stay away from. I go to what do you call them? I call hotspots. I go to Newark, New Jersey. I go to Patterson, New Jersey. I go to Philadelphia multiple times a week, and I am with some people. Some of the warehouses that I go to, nobody wears a mask. They're laughing at this. And if anybody in that place is positive, they're all positive, and they're all breathing on me. And so I could possibly, at any time, be infected and not know it. So there's that argument. People would say, well, you definitely can't open your church. Maybe I should just stay home. Thoughts?
That would certainly be your choice, but that's what this all boils down to is individual choice. The government was not put in place to protect our health. They were put in place to protect our rights. Read all of our founding documents, read the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. There was a great concern that the government's primary job was the protection of rights, not our health. Okay. And so, yeah, the loving thing for you to do, Tim, might be to, like, in deference to the elderly who are going to say, you know what, I would rather die worshiping, and that's certainly their option. But you might say, as an act of love, I choose to stay home. But the bottom line is that should be your choice. And our choice has been taken away from us. And worse than that, we've really conceded it. We've given our rights away,
Which the big problem with that isn't just coronavirus. It's the next thing the government thinks that they need to tell us. When we're not smart enough to think on our own or to protect ourselves, the government now has all this history of telling us what to do and not do. That's the scary thing.
Yeah, that's it. And you know what? The next time something comes up, here's one of the concerns that I think might be legitimate. Raise your hand if you're familiar with The Little Boy Who Cried Wolf, or the story of Chicken Little. There might be an actual real threat that comes down the pipe, whether it's of health concern, climate, or whatever, that the government warns of. And we might all sit here and go, yeah, I remember when you told us 5 million people in Wisconsin were going to die, and it was 400. So I ain't closing anything down. I'm going to do whatever I want and forget it. And, at what point are people going to turn tone deaf to this kind of stuff? Because you watch the news now, it's like the War of the Worlds every day, and you turn in midstream like, what? We're getting attacked by aliens? I'm going to jump out a window here. It's, but yeah, you're right. There has been a dangerous precedent set for just how willing the American people are to be ruled.
Michael Coughlin, say it. You put it in chat. The next thing they're going to tell us why we have to do what we have to do has to do with what?
Yeah, I think climate change and stuff, that's the big one that people have been pushing for a long time. And I think at some point they've now established that when the powers that be say we have a health scare, everyone needs to follow this. Not being allowed to use straws or whatever it happens to be, that seems like one they'd use. Maybe that one's too obvious. Maybe whatever it's going to be will be more hidden. But I think that I'm with Len. I think if a church decided, no, I might disagree, but if a church decided, hey, we've got a lot of sickness going on in our church right now, and we don't know who has it. We've got some people that are really susceptible, and we don't want to tell them stay home. Maybe we just won't meet 1 week. People could argue about that, but if a church decided to do that on their own, I'd also be able to stand away and say, well, that's that church's autonomous choice to make. But it was like Len's point, when you're being told you can't meet by someone else who doesn't have that God-given authority over you as the church, that's when it's a problem. Because even if you were in like a Presbyterian system, and I'm not an expert on it, but where there were authorities that were over your church, I could still say, okay, well, maybe that's okay. But the fact is that the government just doesn't have that authority. It's just the idea that somehow the government is incapable of some of the most basic tasks, right? I mean, what's the joke? If you want to ruin something, like get it government regulated, but yet we're supposed to like completely trust them with our health and with being able to even understand science. I mean, the lady or the guy in Minnesota or Pennsylvania is a dude, chick, or whatever. Like this person doesn't know how many genders there are or which one they are. But they're telling everyone in Pennsylvania, here's health advice. To me, it's impossible anyway. And all you need is one hippie in there, and then everybody's got to be vegan, or you need some guy who only thinks we should eat beef and not pork. I mean, there's always going to be somebody with their weird personal preference. Because the same thing would happen if I was in charge of everyone's diet in Ohio. Like, it wouldn't be good because people deserve their own choices. And so I think that we need to be thoughtful about people, but I think we need to be careful acting like, and people are going to differ maybe with what I say here. I think we need to be careful acting like Sabbath worship, or for some of you, just like Lord's Day worship, is not a command from God that we should just follow. I mean, there's going to be risk everywhere. I mean, we read these heroic stories of people that walk 100 miles across beds of nails and through fire, and like they battle wolves so they can go to church like once a week, and they spend their whole day traveling just for like an hour of worship, and half of them die of starvation because they can't eat that day, or what, we praise these people in these other areas where it's difficult to get to church, and I think we should be willing to risk a little bit more to be there, I guess.
And to speak pastorally, if I may, to your question, Tim, I had a similar situation, actually. I had a young lady who was contemplating having a Bible study. She was going to do it. She's a nurse. COVID patients started to show up at her hospital, not en masse, not anywhere near along the order of what they said. Most of the hospital, I think, is shut down for the same reason that most others are. But we talked through that situation. For her, it was a matter of conscience. And so she elected not to do that. If I was your pastor and you came to me with that situation, I would probably counsel you to come to church. And if people come to you to shake your hand, just say, you know what, brother, sister, I really feel comfortable in this time, or somehow make that known. But that's something that I could have handled as your elder with you. I could have helped you think through and talk through. Not that I'm your father. This is another issue that was raised in the church. What do we tell? I had somebody raise this. What do we as elders tell? And I said, I think that's a wrong first question, man.
His phone died.
Yep.
That's Satan right
That's
there. He
that's
was good.
right.
That was good.
That was good what he was getting into.
That's demonic.
Josh Fritz,
Yay.
the Godcast. He was in.
Oh.
How are you today?
I am doing well. I just got back from service. That's where I was.
As we're talking about why churches are closed, you were busy at church.
I was, yes. I again, I apologize. I don't know the extent of the conversation, but what I gather is that certain situations are different. That's what I'm gathering from the conversation. I was in the car a little bit, and I heard a little bit of it. But I'll just give you a little perspective, I guess, from my church, that we've continued to meet. There were those that haven't come and still are not coming because of the crisis. And the only one other person that came recently, just came back, is wearing a mask. So again, the pastor did not impose a you must be here. He just said to all of us, the members, he said, I'll be here. If you want to come, come. And what I've done, I'm in a predicament myself because my children, my situation's a little different with my family. My children are with their mother. So what I've done, what I've elected to do, is live stream the service only to them so that they can still watch it. It's a whole big issue, a whole family issue with mine. And I want my children with me, but I understand that they're not. And it's an instance in which every circumstance is different, but the same issue is true. I did get today. That the reason why I'm late right now is because I actually had some time to actually connect my children to the church family with my phone, and I said, "Look, everybody says hi," because my pastor is not familiar with anything like this, any technology like that, and he was able to say hello to them. He was able to say hi, that we miss you, we want to see you soon. And if it were in my power, they'd be with me. But at this point, I leave it with God. But at the same time, there's no pressure coming from the leadership in my church. It's just not. There's no pressure. And if there's any instance, any solace I have, is that I can record the sermons, and if the children are willing to sit with me and listen to it, then that's one thing. And the whole thing is just from the government down, and all of those things in response to the government and how the role of the government is in all of this. I live in the worst state, I think, in the union, to be honest with you.
Amen, brother.
So we've been, I think they're thinking about extending this lockdown into June, depending on regions in the state. And New York City and Long Island, that's where I'm from, tends to be I think, heavy hit. And I say this with air quotes because I'm really not sure. The funny thing, they say that they're going to possibly extend the deadline. And this funny thing is, it's just that the verses that we went over in Scripture this morning, I'll be brief with it. It was in Romans 3:4, and we know that the context of that Scripture is speaking differently to what's going on today. I'm not going to say that, but just the Scripture was, let God be true and every man a liar. So we're dealing with a lot of lies coming from our government, and we have to pray for them. We have to put them in perspective before God. They're there. They're ministers of God, whether we like it or not.
Wait, does that include imprecatory prayers?
For me, I don't pray imprecatory. I just pray God for deal with the situation. Either save the man, redeem him by grace, or remove him. So I guess in a sense it is imprecatory. But you do know that we do know that from the Psalms, David had that issue as well, praying for God to deal with his enemies. So again, I want to lay at the feet of the Lord and say, look, deal with this governor, work in his heart, make him change. Obviously, it's not looking that way. Its situation might be getting worse, but there's hope for the Christian, for the believer. There are still those that are in the face of this, still meeting, no matter what. And the only thing I have to say, there's maybe a few elderly that are in my congregation that are one just recently came back, but they've kept their distance when they're in the church. I'll say hi to them. I don't get very close to them, and we go about the day. It's not we long for that fellowship because, we have a short time here on earth. It's going to be short. And it's one day we're going to be closer ever than ever with those that have long gone before us, that have passed out of this life already and are in glory right now. So that fellowship is sweet to a believer. And needless to say, I'll say here online, it's not even close. We long to be with brothers and sisters in the faith. And for those that stay home, if it's their prerogative, they want to stay home, let them stay home. Don't badger them. Pray for them. Minister to them. Do what you can, And some of my church members, I can't really get a hold of. Others I can, but most of us, if not all of us, with the exceptions of a few, have stayed together. We've met. We haven't missed a service. We've kept going. So.
All right. I want to bring up something that was brought up in the chat. Because we don't have much time left, actually we've gone overtime, which is fine. I'll introduce something that's not quite controversial. Ha ha. The comment was
I was going to say, you want me to leave now?
The question was framed, can we blame the church in general's response to this to the dispensationalists? And I'll add, if we were all post-millennialists, wouldn't we be more bold in our approach at this time? Whereas the dispensationalists are like, we knew things were going to get bad, so all right, well, things are bad. Not to bring up anything that would be quite controversial or heated.
I don't know that eschatology has a whole lot to do with whether you're amillennial, premillennial, postmillennial. All of them recognize that ebbs and flows throughout church history are going to happen, where things are going to wane for the better and worse. And even for the hopeful amillennialist, they recognize that there is that these things happen, right? So I don't see, maybe pray for the dispensationalists, I guess. Imagine if Jack Van Impe were alive today, boy, he would be burning hours and hours of tape with all the prophecy he would be interpreting out of Revelation through this. But yeah, I don't see a relevance to it. Honestly, I don't see any more boldness out of or any such thing out of post-millennials than I do from amillennials or premillennial dispensationalists or historical premillennials.
Are any post-millennial? Do you know of any post-millennial churches who have shut their doors?
I know of one post-millennial church. Maybe two? Doug Wilson and that joke down in Arizona.
Yeah, their churches okay. That's the big question. Are there only two post-millennial churches in America?
I'm sure there's more, but those are the two that come strictly to mind. There's none in my community that I'm aware of, and I'm pretty. I'd like to think I got my finger on the pulse of what's going on spiritually in my community.
Are the Seven Mountain, aren't Pentecostal post-millennials, a lot of them?
Not in the Reconstructionist sense, not in the Gary DeMar. That's a different kind of a dominionist mandate of post-millennialism, I would say. I think that those are kind of, I think there's a fork in the stream where they kind of veer off in different directions, or I don't know. Well, I guess John Speed's church would be post-millennial, wouldn't it? Christ is King Baptist?
Well, he's in Texas now.
Oh, okay. So there's three.
That would be a fun question on Facebook. So there has to.
I'll jump in. Tim?
Yeah.
Were you gonna say something?
No.
All right, I'll jump in. So maybe a slightly different way of putting it than Len put it is that dispensationalism is a hermeneutic. It's not. It's often kind of misnomered with eschatology because it's eschatology that it deduces is so distinct and well known, and really it's known for that. But dispensationalism is a hermeneutic, and some of the other hermeneutic you think about would be like covenantalism, and there's different ways that men, we'll say women too, but that men read the Bible and interpret it based on their hermeneutic. And if you are a dispensationalist, there's a couple of hermeneutics that you're employing, and one of them is that you're trying to be as literal as you possibly can about everything you read. And more literal readings of the First Peter 2 passage and the Romans 13 passage are going to yield far more just, I'll just call it like kind of blind submission to the governing authorities, rather than a more thoughtful, or we'll say nuanced, well, we obey them in these cases, but then there's certain cases where we would disobey them. And then a second thing is that's distinct between dispensationalism and we'll say like Reformed covenant theology, because I know like New Covenant theology would be more like dispensationalism in this regard, is that, you know, Reformed covenant theology, you're going to get people who are Sabbatarians, where we literally think the fourth commandment applies today in far more serious ways than dispensationalists or New Covenant theologians. And so you're going to have you should have more people that call themselves like Reformed covenantalists who say, hey, we're still going to meet, even if the government says we shouldn't. Whereas if you're dispensational or you know, like in New Covenant, because that's what Len is, I think, you're not going to take that the same way. And so I think you'd have to actually poll people to find out for sure if churches are meeting or not, because but I would think it makes sense that when you listen to a lot of guys today, that people who are talking more about Romans 13 means we should be agreeing with the government more, in this sense that I think you'd find more dispensationalists there. But I've heard some good people who were more Reformed, not dispensational, who said that they were trying to agree with the government. Kevin Swanson, you guys heard of that guy, Generations Radio? I think he's post-millennial, and his church is in Colorado, and he was talking about how their goal the whole time has been, can they, he was quoting from Matthew 5, come to terms quickly with their accuser. So their goal has been, can we work within what the government wants us to do and still like do church? And when they started to find that the government wasn't working with them, you know, in the way that they needed, I think that they've had to do what would be defying the orders there. But there was a really good talk on this same topic by men that were more prepared than we were. They actually planned for it on the NCFIC website, the National Council for Family Integrated Churches, and they had a panel of about 6 people that talked about like what the Bible says about all these things. And there was a little bit of a diversity of opinions. So there's a little something for people that maybe believe in different ways to support what they were thinking. But it also was very challenging because I thought it was a good discussion. I don't know if it's easy to find or not. But that's my opinion on the dispensationalist thing. I thought it was a good question.
Apparently it was asked in a half-hearted, kind of joking way, but I thought it would be fun to bring it up. So the big question is, how many dispensational churches are there actually? It would be a fun question. On the social media platforms, I really appreciate you guys coming on. I really enjoy each of you, your friendship, your opinions, and your willingness to come on and just chat. Let me end this in a different way. I have a 1-minute timer. I'll give each of you 1 minute in your closing comments to the vast, massive, worldwide BTWN audience. I mean, it's massive. We're actually listened to in every country in the entire world.
Good.
At least once in 14 in however many years. 8 years. At least once in every country in the world. There you go. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first, if you don't mind. In my opinion, I look at things like a mission. When I was in EMT, you didn't get tunnel vision, and you had a mission, and you stayed on mission when you had to deal with the situation. Matthew 28:19. Go therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all that I commanded you. And lo, I'm with you to the end of the age. Right? Go forth and make disciples. That's our mission. Doesn't matter if it's coronavirus. Doesn't matter if it's a dictatorship running us. It doesn't matter what's going on around us. We have got to stay on mission. I liked what Len had to say with pastors need to stand up. Not just pastors, but the men of the church, especially the men of the church, have got to stand up and take a position as men of God and make disciples. That's our mission. That's our mission, is to go and make disciples. I think that was my 1 minute bell.
That is your 1 minute bell. I have it, so I'm going to use it. So
you like playing with that thing?
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Maybe we'll start a tradition and have our 1 minute closing comments. And who will be next?
I'll go.
All right.
I think that I really like what John said about being on mission. And I think that we have to be careful to not make the mission so narrow that we forget to love people in ways that might seem different to others. So like, maybe defending the rights of people who won't be able to stand up for themselves. So I think that there's room for people to do those kinds of things in this situation. And I do think that churches are in desperate need of leadership, leaders that can actually exegete scripture, that are willing to, and that, like Len said, who's going to lead him through when real persecution comes. And I think that's a legit question. And men should be showing that they are capable of that.
All right. Thank you for your comments. You were even under a minute. Jonathan Bradford is next. Look at, he's ready to go.
Great points by both you guys. I would say we look at what does Jesus say the two biggest commandments, the greatest commandments: love God and love others. One of my favorite verses in Galatians 5, where it talks about the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. This morning, our passage at church was James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. God says, if you ask for wisdom, I will give it to you. And I think in challenging times like this, we need wisdom to rightly discern, how do I best love God and love my neighbor in what's going on around me? You know what? I got governing authorities who say this. I've got society who's going to look at me this way. I've got other Christians who are asking these questions. And there's discernment that needs to be used in wisely responding to the entire situation that we're put in. So I would say constantly pray for wisdom and ask God, what's the show me the path of love that I can walk in all of this.
All right. If we
and I just took a couple extra seconds because Michael was short.
Okay. Yeah, Michael, pass them along. We'll save Len Pettis for last. Josh Fritz.
I'm just going to read the scripture if anyone minds. I'll read it. You can just guess where I am. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death is better than the day of birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone. The living should take this to heart. Frustration is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure. It is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. Like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. I'm just going to skip down a little bit because of what I wanted to read. Wisdom, like an inheritance, is a good thing, and benefits those who see the sun. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this: God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these, the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. Wisdom makes one wise person more powerful than 10 rulers in a city. Indeed, there is no one on earth who is righteous, no one who does what is right and never sins. Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. All this I tested by wisdom, and I said, I am determined to be wise, but this was beyond me. Whatever exists is far off and most profound. Who can discover it? So I turned my mind to understand, to investigate, and to search out wisdom and the scheme of things, and to understand the stupidity of wickedness and the madness of folly. I find more bitter than death the woman who is a snare, whose heart is a trap, and whose hands are chains. The man who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner she will ensnare. Look, says the teacher, this is what I have discovered, adding one thing to another to discover the scheme of things. While I was still searching but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. This only have I found: God created mankind upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes. I have nothing to add, just that. Just wanted to read it.
Great. Thank you very much. I couldn't let the buzzer buzz on Scripture, so there's
unequal weights,
equal weights,
unequal measures.
Easy, Durbin.
Well, that being said, there's no time left for Len Pettis. No, just
perfect, because I wish you had saved that for last.
Well, so no, I want to hear. We all want to hear. So, Len, let me start the timer. I want to give you fair weights. So your time will begin now.
Okay, so I've struggled a lot over the last 6 weeks for various reasons.
Okay, thank you very much, Len Pettis. I appreciate you coming on.
Good night, guys.
No, go ahead, Len. Sorry about that.
Well, some of you know about my struggles, and you maybe even see some of it in the way I post on Facebook. And my struggle has been that I fear for my children living in this world. And there was a time where the attitude among men was, I'm going to fight so my children don't have to. And and then I look to the Scripture, which I think teaches a very clear ethic of pacifism among Christians. And I see Paul, who says, don't get yourself involved in the affairs of the world. And he's even comparing it to people in combat, right? That they shouldn't worry about what's going on at home when they're engaged in the battle, as it were. So I struggle a lot between theology and theology proper, biblical theology, and being an American, and the understanding of rights. That I don't think there's any question that our founders were Christian men, not just deists, Christians, who recognize that our rights are given from God. And just as to when you sin, you first and foremost sin against God. I believe that when you when you take a man's rights as an unrighteous government, you are in some sense blaspheming God, because God is the giver of those rights, because we are endowed with his image. We bear his image as such. That's why it was such an offense when Cain killed Abel. So I don't know what to say about it, guys. I'm fearful for the future, but I have hope in Christ, and so I'm just trying to instill that hope into my children. Don't hope in man. Don't hope in governments. Don't hope in Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Trump, Biden, whoever. Don't trust in those things. Trust in Christ. He's the only one who fulfills his promises. We were reading this morning in Genesis chapter 12 about, in spite of all of Abram's sin and unrighteousness, that God made a promise to him. And that promise extends to us. And he is going to keep his promise to his people. And we can put our full faith and hope in that, knowing that it will never be corrupted or twisted, as it will with governments of man.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Len. Great points. Len, we need to end this as quick as possible because obviously you're missing the dance party that's going on in your kitchen over your left shoulder. A lot of exciting things going on at the Pettis home.
We are having Sundays on Sunday.
Your boy is hopping up and down. If you're listening to the podcast, you've got to watch the video.
Because we have sprinkles.
Oh, sprinkles tonight.
Rainbow or the chocolate jimmies?
Rainbows.
Espresso
Nice.
Sundays.
What's the name of the cat that who put sprinkles in the freezer? Who put sprinkles in the freezer?
Probably a dispensationalist.
You guys don't know? Dwight did.
Past my time.
Oh, the Office reference. When he killed Angela's cat, Sprinkles, yes.
I'm watching that now. Okay. From Edmonton, Canada, Northeast Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Long Island, Columbus, Ohio, and Central Wisconsin, and where's Austin from? Cleveland, Ohio area. Thank you so much for watching, and let me do a little closing here on the YouTubes. Thanks, guys, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Hopefully you'll come on again next week. I'm not sure who my guest will be. I've asked a couple people, and I'll be camping the next 5 weekends, so I'm not sure how that's going to go. We're gonna see how it goes. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I might do something on a different night. I might hook some stuff up at the campground where I'm at and broadcast from there on a Sunday night. I'm not exactly sure, but stay tuned. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. Like the content. Share it if you would. And if you have the means, please consider supporting us financially. Go to BibleThumpingWingnut.com and click on Support Our Ministry. Also there you can check out all the podcasts by even many of the folks that you listened to tonight and on this episode. This is episode 385. What's the comment? Michael Coughlin says, is this the green room? All right. Thank you for watching. And until next time, take care and God bless.